It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast for another morning of mulling over what is happening in the property market. And we will take you to Perth and to Matthew Hughes in just a moment. Now, you can stream us anytime, anywhere. As you know, there are multiple platforms, including iHeartRadio, up to a Thursday today, March the 20th. Tell you what, April the 1st isn't far away. Now, on March the 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. So it's been 5 years. I don't know about you, but for me, it feels less than 5 years on one hand, but also like more than 10 years ago on the other hand. That's kind of the crazy thing with COVID. And we did go through so much in life, friendships, family, co-workers, that all got put right through the mincer. Attitudes changed, the world changed dramatically, and there is definitely this post-world COVID that we now live in. And while 5 years have passed, its impact on the housing market remains pretty profound. CoreLogic told us a few days ago that one of the most striking effects has been the dramatic shifts in housing values. Since March 2020, home prices have surged nationwide, rising by an astonishing 38.4%, adding roughly $227,000 to the median dwelling home. Now, I've got a friend, and you probably know people too, that have got multiple properties. He owns over 50 properties. I told him to sell and enjoy life, but he said, I can't do it. I love my property market too much. So when is enough enough? I guess it's a hobby. Matthew Hughes is joining us right now. He loves his property as well, the Managing Director at Capital Property Advisory there in Perth. Good morning to you, Matthew. So what do you reckon? Does it feel like 5 years ago to you?
I think I agree with your sentiment. It certainly doesn't feel like 5 years has passed, in that the recollection of that time is still very vivid in my mind. But it also seems like a long time ago now. So it's a little bit strange in terms of my recollection of it. But I think in WA, we had a much easier journey through COVID than some others. I'm sure some people in Victoria and other states have probably got it still very much fresh in their memory.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Twilight Zone. Yes, on one hand, a short amount of time, and on the other hand, a lifetime ago. Well, let's focus in on the Perth property market, which, as we know, it's been very steady, upward trend for some time. There's been a lot of gains in your market. Since our last discussion, has there been any notable developments or shift in market conditions?
Not a huge shift. I guess, obviously, with the RBA decision, that was having an impact prior to the decision in terms of sentiment and confidence, and it's having an impact now that we've seen the reality of a rate cut. But Perth continues to be one of the most resilient and in-demand markets in the country. Over the past few weeks, we've seen continued upward pressure on prices, albeit at lower levels, which we expected this year. And the persistently low housing supply and the strong demand from owner-occupiers appears to be offsetting the slowdown that we've seen in the investor demand, which is slowing down, but albeit from very high levels, I might add. Vacancy rates here are still quite low in comparison to what we consider a balanced market, and that's driven rental prices even higher, according to REWA and their most recent statistics. And we're also seeing ongoing local and interstate investor interest here. Although we're advising clients with lower budgets to explore other markets, I don't have a lot of comfort with what investors can buy in Perth with a budget of around, say, 600, maybe even 650 now. And we're positioning those people into Melbourne and have been for the past few months. But there's still a lot of value in the Perth market above that point. But you have to be quite strategic about where you're putting your money now, I think.
Yeah, so you're talking about those investors. Has there been any recent changes in government policies or lending regulations that could impact property investors in Perth?
Yeah, the obvious one I just mentioned is the rate cut and that we've just experienced, and also the potential for more rate cuts. So that's going to be the depth and frequency of rate cuts this year, if there are more of them, is going to be a big variable in terms of how markets perform this year. And that's across the country, not just in Perth. And then obviously with the macroprudential policies, APRA are yet to do anything with their, in my opinion, ridiculously high 3% buffer on servicing. And if they do, I think that in conjunction with, even if it's just another 1 or 2 rate cuts this year, I think could really sort of pour fuel on the fire in both Perth and a lot of other markets around the country. And that'll obviously result in some additional price growth throughout this year and probably into next. In terms of government policy, we've just been through a state election here and Labor's just been re-elected again. And they've been discussing measures for a while now to increase housing supply, such as accelerating land releases and encouraging some more high density developments. But with construction delays and labour shortages and the cost of construction, new supply isn't going to materialise fast enough to meet demand. So I think that's going to keep pressure on prices and rents for some time with that supply lagging.
Well, we like to talk about the trends, of course we do, and that'll lead me into which suburbs or property types do you think have been showing the strongest performance in your market lately? Are there any standouts?
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's the last few years, it's sort of been, you could just throw a dart at a map and find a suburb that's going to do double-digit growth or more, whereas now it is a little bit more nuanced. And the biggest gains we've seen recently and over the last sort of 3 to 6 months have been in the more tightly held, high-demand suburbs where owner-occupiers and in some cases investors are competing for limited amounts of quality stock. Middle ring suburbs like Innaloo, Doubleview have seen significant activity recently due to their proximity to the city and strong rental yields. And then you've got some of the outer suburbs like your Byfords and your Alkimos are attracting buyers for looking for affordability and potential for longer term price growth. But I will add that they're not suburbs that we're particularly advocating buying in. We're just reporting the activity levels that we're seeing in the data here.
And that is Matthew Hughes there in Perth. When we come back, we're going to be finding out what is happening in the rental market. And Matthew is going to look into his crystal ball and tell us what he thinks the next quarter is going to look like. So we'll do that after this.
It's the Real Estate Podcast, talking properties from 6 a.m. every day from every corner of the Australian real estate market.
It's about timing the purchase when it's right for your own personal circumstances. I think the worst scenario that you could potentially be in is losing your job and then defaulting on those mortgage repayments. And, there's 2 ways to look at affordability. It's not only saving a deposit, but it's also the ongoing repayments that you need to be able to make.
If you're a new listener, welcome. We talk to the most knowledgeable real estate experts across Australia every day from 6 a.m.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday. We are in WA finding out all that is good. I was going to say all that is bad as well, but it's pretty positive in Perth. And Matthew, with the Perth rental market remaining extremely tight, what is happening at the moment around strategic timing for investors to enter the market?
Yeah, I think the rental market's still one of the strongest in the country. And obviously with price growth, yields have softened a little bit. So for people that had purchased a year, 2, 3 years ago, their yields are now looking fantastic and they're probably into sort of neutral or positive territory in terms of their gearing. And the yields here are significantly higher than a Sydney or a Melbourne. But it's important to assess the market holistically and not be blinded by just these headline statistics. So investors are going to continue to benefit from capital growth here, albeit at that sort of moderating rate and rising rents. So it is still an attractive time to buy in Perth. But I think the key is selecting the right property in the right suburb. We're not in that rising tide lifting all boats scenario that we've seen over the last few years anymore. And I think investors should be focused on well-located homes in supply-constrained suburbs rather than chasing cheaper properties with high yields but weaker fundamentals.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a formula for getting things wrong if you're doing that. Now, looking ahead in the crystal ball, and we're going to get your forecast right now for Perth's property market over the next quarter. Now, what do you think? Are there any factors investors should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think you want to just keep an eye on the fundamentals. So we're looking very closely at the macro statistics. We expected that a little bit more stock would come to market in the new year. It didn't materialise. We're still sitting at around the same level as what we were pre-Christmas last year. So we came off a very low base of around 3,000 properties on the market. It jumped up over 5,000. It's now sitting at around 5,000 still and is being constrained by the demand. So the high transaction levels are soaking up that those listings that are coming to market. But I think we'll see continued moderate price growth throughout the year unless there's any sort of major policy shift or external economic or global shock. I think Perth will remain a pretty seller-friendly market, and rental conditions will remain tight and probably push rents slightly higher again, but not much higher than where they are currently in my view. I think we're probably pretty close to an affordability ceiling in this space. My advice to investors moving forward is just to avoid the so-called hotspots that have experienced the above market growth in the past few years and focus on areas with good amenity and strong owner-occupier demand. And if you're ready to buy, I would act with a sense of urgency as well, because competition for good property is not going anywhere here.
Oh, that is brilliant, Matthew. You got through that podcast, and I'm going to let everybody know what's going on in the background. Poor old Matthew's got a bulged disc and in a reasonable amount of pain. So well done for getting through that, mate.
Thank you, mate. I had to stop the painkillers this morning to get my brain working again. So it was a tough ask this morning, but we got through it.
It's such a tricky thing. It's always different for different people when it comes to bulged discs.
It is, yeah. I've had an MRI and I've got a really good team, and I've been getting treatment sort of 2 to 4 hours a day. I'm throwing absolutely everything at it, but it just doesn't seem to want to budge. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll start to get a little bit of relief.
Now, you're somebody that is into their fitness. Iron Men, do you think you might have to re-look at that and some of your running?
I've actually got a big challenge that I'm doing in early May, and my coach is trying to get me ready for that. So I basically can't walk at the moment. And the start of this 5-day challenge is we're doing 50 hours with no sleep and about 18 hours of non-stop physical challenges in that period. So it's pretty ambitious, but he's confident he can get me ready. So we'll see how we go.
So you're the same as this friend of mine who's got over 50 properties. He doesn't want to sell up because he loves it too much. You've got a bulged disc. You don't want to give up any of your exercises because you're into your fitness too much.
Yeah, I'm not ready to give up just yet, mate. I'm only 46, so yeah, I've got a few kilometres left in me.
All right, well, we'll leave it there, Matthew. Good luck in the rehabilitation and good luck there in Perth. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Craig. Chat with you soon, mate.
We help to break down real estate every day to help you better understand the Australian property market.
If you cut out all of these crap purchases that you're buying, you won't just save for your first home, you'll be well on your way to perhaps buying your second property. Ditch the junk, focus on what really matters, and set yourself up for a stronger financial future.
Absolutely. And I don't want to be one of those people who continuously points to people buying their smashed avos and having these lifestyles that younger people tend to have that we certainly didn't have, and say, well, we had it right, you've got it wrong. We got to live our lives quite privately, and anything that we did was known by our neighbour and maybe our best friend or our small circle of friends, but not the wider community. And young people do live in this wider community, very public lives through social media, where there's a lot of pressure to perform against other people.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.